I just know.
Good, all in the same boat. Okay, so we are on day 2 of Mishlei 15.2. Quick review. Lashon Chachamim Tetiv Da'as Ufi Ksilim Yabia Iveles. So we translated that as the language, literally the tongue of the wise improves knowledge, but the mouth of fools expresses foolishness. And then the Yabia in this context clearly does refer to speech, but the connotation is like a spring. So whether you say that means flowing, springing, bubbling, mud blurping, mud pot blurping. Yeah. Okay, so that's the connotation. Our questions were: what is the subject of the pasuk? What is the definition of Chachamim and Ksilim in this context, and why specifically Chachamim and Ksilim as opposed to, let's say, Nevonim, Evilim, okay, all these other Mishlei terms. 3, what's the Chiddush? Sounds obvious, especially the second half. Wherein lies the Chiddush? 4, what, if anything, is the difference between Lashon and Pi? Do they both mean speech, or does this nuance convey something important? 5, what is the Da'as in this context, and to whom does it belong? Is it their own knowledge? Is it the knowledge of the people they're talking to? Is it knowledge itself? Likewise, 6, what is the Ivelis in this context, and to whom does it belong? Same question. 7, in what sense do they tetiv das, improve in what way? 8, if we factor in the connotation of flowing wellspring, that sounds like a good thing. So why use that specific phrase to describe the fools? 9, what exactly are the two halves of the pasuk? Sorry, how exactly are the two halves of the pasuk opposites? If the Ksilim are Yabia their Iveles, does this imply that the Chachamim are not Yabia their Das? Does the first half imply that the Ksilim are being Tetiv their Iveles? 10, who is the intended audience? 11, what is the practical application? Okay, so I was going to prepare this morning. We had a Yichud Hashem emergency, which I had to tend to. And so I think hopefully I did that, but Yichud Hashem takes precedence over Mishlei. So I did not get a chance to really prepare. That's my excuse. Okay. So hopefully, I had given an assignment about Yichud Hashem, and a student asked a question on the chat, and I had to respond. Ordinarily, I would defer, I would delay responding to a student question about homework, but Yichud Hashem, you can't let that sit, in case you're curious, the question was on the Rambam in 1.7 in Yesodei Torah, where he says, if there were many gods, then they would of necessity be material bodies, because the only way to differentiate two entities is through accidental properties that are shared by material bodies. And he wanted to know, what does that mean? so I had to, it's just a good question. Yeah. So anyway, before, what was it?
It has to be material.
Well, that's his question. Yeah. He said, why can't they be spiritual? Why can't you have two spiritual entities? Yeah. Okay, so if we want to talk about that, we can talk about it after shiur. Okay. Yeah. So what do you call it? Yeah. You should think about that question also. I know. All right. So before we go over so I had intended to sift through what we came up with yesterday and organize it, but I did not do that. I did, though, when I started preparing, I did find support for David's hot take. Okay, so David's hot take reading was knowledge improves the speech of the wise. Okay, and where did I find this? In the fake Radak. Okay, so the fake Radak on Mishlei says,
what's the fake Radak again?
I'll explain in a second. Lashon Chachamim hadas hi mitiva lashon hachachamim. The knowledge improves the language of the Chachamim, or the speech of the Chachamim, ki enam medarim ela b'das, because they only speak with das. Okay. Now, unfortunately, upiksilim yidaber iveles, and the mouth of fools speaks foolishness. So he says, he does the thing that I said you shouldn't do, which is he has them not symmetrical. Okay, right? Quick aside about why do I call this the fake Radak, and especially since Allah Torah does not agree with me, right? Because for fake stuff they'll say miyuchas le, right? So for example, in where are we? You should know which mesechtas don't have real people. I mean, not real, sorry, the real people. Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah, I was gonna go tiny. Let's just see here. Yeah, tiniest, right? So it says miyuchas l'Rashi, right? Yeah. So it means it's attributed to Rashi, right? Yeah. So here's the thing. So with Radak, the classic example in Mishlei is Ibn Ezra in the Mikros Gedolos on Mishlei is not Ibn Ezra. It's Rav Moshe Kimchi, who's the Radak's older brother. There is a real Ibn Ezra commentary on Mishlei, but it is not found anywhere online. Okay, so the Radak, I read a thing. I forgot how I got this. Oh yeah. I was reading up on the Radak last summer, and there are certain people who are academics who specialize in one Rishon. So the Radak person is Naomi Grunhouse. Okay, she's like a Radak expert. So she's of the opinion that the Radak on Mishlei is not really the Radak, and she gives a bunch of convincing arguments. For example, Radak was a grammarian. His brother was a grammarian. His father was a grammarian. They wrote grammar books, and the shitos in this Radak commentary don't align with the grammar. And he never quotes his father or his brother, which he does all the time in his actual commentaries. Also, it seems like this Radak, or whoever wrote this Radak, was not familiar with other Rishonim in a firsthand way. Like he didn't have access to certain texts, like he'll paraphrase, whereas Radak style is mostly to quote. So there are all these arguments. So I asked Rabbi Novetsky at Al HaTorah, I said, why do you list this as the Radak if it's not the Radak? And he sent me a 48-page article by Yitzchak Berger, which is providing an alternate argument that this is the Radak, okay, which I have not read through yet. So Machlokas, I'm so far, since I've only read Naomi Grunhouse's thing, that I'm pretty convinced. She makes really good arguments. I'm pretty convinced that this is not the Radak. But anyway,
Did you read Robert Berger?
I assume she did, but I don't know.
Did you?
Oh, no, not yet. I did not have time to read the 48 pages. Yeah. He wrote this after. He says, recently, Naomi Grunhouse, in the most sensitive treatment of the matters to date, has vigorously challenged the attribution of this work to Radak based on a range of arguments that primarily concern exegetical and compositional style. In the present study, mindful of Grunhouse's many important observations, I offer an alternative perspective on the commentary that strongly supports the position of Kasuto and Talmage, affirming Radak's authorship. So delve into that if you'd like. Yeah. Okay, so, but regardless, whoever wrote this agrees with David. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I know Sean has an idea from yesterday. Let's just quickly try to reconstitute the general approach we had yesterday instead of dividing it all into pieces. So, okay, let's do this. Yeah, anyone want to try to just sum up what you walked away with from yesterday? Because it ended up being, it started off as like Ariel and then others, but then it ended up being like an amalgam. So yeah, what's your impression from yesterday if you can? I'm asking you to do something that I didn't do, so. Yeah, you want to go?
Sure.
Go.
When someone is listening to a Chacham, or whether it be the Chacham himself or another person,
Yeah.
Then since it's not like being when it's being verbally expressed, you'll pick up on things and it'll stick better. And then similarly, Dallas will when they see things aloud that they don't make sense or it's false or something.
Right.
And that also like has a negative reaction.
Okay, so I'm thinking maybe the cleanest way to divide this is in terms of whose knowledge. Okay, so that is talking about the knowledge of the listener, right? So if you hang around Chachamim and they speak, their speech will improve your knowledge because they're always seeking clarity, and they're seeing clarity in ideas they have, and they're also seeking more knowledge. So just the general tenor of their talking is going to improve your own mind and your knowledge. And in fact, maybe it's a deliberate ambiguity of das can mean mind or knowledge. So it's improving your mind and your particular knowledge. Whereas if you hang out with Ksilim, who are just using speech to express their feelings and their vague, imaginary, half-baked like notions, so then it will give articulation to things that shouldn't be articulated and will like crystallize those in your mind as realities. And we gave the example of like conspiracy theorists, right? That I don't know if that was an example for this application, but I think it still works, is that like you might have some question or notion about something, and when you hear conspiracy theorists talk about it, they flesh out all the details in ways that like take stances on things and make them firmer, and that can actually like inhibit your knowledge. And that was one approach. I remember Moshe Koppel's approach, which was about not specifically the knowledge of the listener, but the ideas, right? So ideas only exist in the world via speech, meaning you can't convey idea, well, again, speech and language, right? So ideas exist via language, and that's what allows ideas to last beyond the people who come up with them. So there are people who are Chachamim who will improve knowledge and advance it in mankind. And then there are Ksilim who will obscure it or distort it, and that can hold people back. Right. I would ask the question there.
What's the practical?
That's exactly the question I was going to ask, is what's the practical application for us? Yeah.
When you consider the audience is someone listening to information, let's say you hear two conflicting views of how to view the world.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Right, you should, be careful with who you're taking information from, number one, and critical of the information itself. So if you hear two accounts of this is how the scientific world works, whatever, and you hear accounts of, I don't know, different scientists, and you say, but we know it's all farce because, and they try to give a convoluted reason that doesn't seem to connect, then maybe you should be wary of who you're listening to or what kind of information you're taking in.
Okay, right. So this is in going back to AP language, English language, right? So this is ethos, as we call it ethos, is that the who the speaker is will affect the way that you evaluate their information, and for good or for bad, right? And if they are Chachamim, then that, in other words, aside from the content itself, you should think about the source and how the source is like how they generally think about the world, and that can influence the way that you evaluate it, which is funny because it's almost the contrary of Rambam's kabel ha'emes b'misha amro, right? Is accept the truth from whoever says it. That's true, right? Accept the truth from whoever says it, but interpret the statement based on who says it. Meaning, if the Rambam says something versus if some Joe Schmo on the street says something, I'm going to evaluate it differently. I'll pause this to give a YBT anecdote. Okay, so that was an approach focusing on the knowledge. And then I think we kind of loosely talked about if it's your own knowledge, and that's you're saying good, say better, that that don't think that if, speaking of lessons from early yeshiva, I mean, I'm sure you guys who were in Migdal picked up on that. Is everyone in Migdal here? No. Yeah, right? Is everyone? Wow. Okay. It's the first time I've ever realized that. Yeah. So you probably picked this up in your early on in Migdal of I think when you're a naive yeshiva guy, you think I have the idea clear. I just can't say it. Really? You could have a strong intuition, but if you can't express it clearly, then you don't really understand it. And the process of formulating it in a speech or in language actually shapes the idea and gets you more knowledge, And similarly, I don't think we said the opposite side. So what would the opposite side of that type of approach be?
Sorry.
Okay, in other words, Lashon Chachamim Tetiv Das. The speech of Chachamim improves knowledge, meaning that they use their speech as a means of actually obtaining more and better knowledge. Okay,
right.
So what would the opposite of that be? Yeah,
I just have to say this one thing. There's a guy in my office. He has to talk to a bunch of people in my office. Like a lot of these people, he tells me they're really, really dumb.
Yeah.
The things that they say, and he told me he feels like whenever he's hanging out with this one person, his IQ lowers.
So that I think is the other idea, right? That's the idea that the Lashon. No, I think that's the idea. No, that's the idea that we were saying for that Ezra reviewed, which is that it affects the knowledge of the listener. I'm saying your own knowledge. If you are a Ksil and you are Yabia Ivelis, there should be some opposite
on the
Ksil himself. Yeah.
Who's saying the,
right. Yeah.
I guess there's two ways to say the other side.
Yeah.
We had one way is that it's like he uses his speech to just walk into his bad idea,
right?
Actually sharpening it.
Okay.
Or is that no, like his speech? It's like there's just no. It's just like there's no filter. He just kind of spews out whatever. There's no crystal.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the least harm would be that he is static and obstructed in his development. The greater harm is by giving articulation to, again, either just expressions of his psyche or to his imagination or to half-baked ideas, but not using actual methodology and actual clear thinking. He's gonna create falsehood or further mislead himself by saying this. Yeah, David.
I think then that comes in line with the fact that they have then put energy into this thought.
Yeah.
And believe that they believe that they have fully thought about this thing. They'll have a much stronger conviction that this is a full-on idea.
It'll become more real to them because they're saying it. Yeah.
And they'll fight much more for this idea as being the truth.
Right. And I think also just the act of expression makes you feel differently towards the idea because you created it. That's how it psychologically feels. Yeah, Moshe?
Right. So I think what else has been saying specifically regarding that they're like a half-baked idea, I think also does reflect what the latter half of the pasuk is saying.
Yeah.
And I think more than just it's a half-baked idea, there isn't really an idea in there. They may or may not think there is an idea in there.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that older doing is, as the pasuk suggests, they're just have an outpouring of words that either the listener will just not be able to conjure up any idea from, or that they'll be able to hear an idea from. I don't know if they're going to believe it or not, but I'm more just inclined to say that there isn't any form to the words that they're saying.
Okay, so
more like a word salad.
I agree with what you're saying, but I do want to again say now I'm more convinced that this is the proper way to divide the pasuk. Whose knowledge? The listeners' knowledge itself, or your knowledge, the speaker, right? So you are also going back to how the listener is going to be affected, right? I'm saying if you're in a vacuum and you just like speak and you're Xil, then they'll still have this bad effect, you know. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to slot these into the correct categories here. I also want to say, by the way, just before I forget, one of the biggest mistakes I made in my early years of yeshiva, especially in Rav Pesach shiur, was that I felt when preparing in doing hachana for morning shiur, I felt like I should not say a svara in shiur unless it was fully formulated. And that ended up having a detrimental impact, because really what you should do is you should express even your half-baked ideas. I mean, obviously, like, read the room, right? But like, you know, you should express your half-baked ideas, because the superior chachma of your Rebbe will help you to refine those. And it reminds me of a thing, you know, people who have been here for a while know, I'm a big advocate of James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and his 3-2-1 newsletter, which he sends out every Thursday. And so one of the things yesterday was, he says, the secret of creative work is to make a lot and publish a little. Don't underestimate the power of giving yourself permission to create junk. Most of what you create will be mediocre or bad, but that's okay. You only have to show people the good stuff. Make 100 things, discard 90, and share the 10 best. Create, edit. Not exactly related to what I just said, but I think there's a similarity, which is, in order to become a lamdan, you have to give yourself permission to create bad svaras, you know? And if you're in a position where you're giving shiur, then don't do that. You know, you have responsibility to the listeners. But if you're in shiur or you're in a chavrusa, then yeah, you should think out loud, because that's part of the process of getting of the training. You know, so I don't want to say never say half-baked ideas, but you know, and also again, there's a safety net in shiur of having someone who can call you out on your bad ideas and help you refine them. Ariel?
Two quick things. One is related to isn't there like a pasuk or maybe like somewhere in the Gemara that says like if you do say something, it does bring it out to reality, that's create something into the world.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know a particular thing. I mean, I know people do point out that some people point out as a drasha, some people point out as an idea that the word davar means statement and thing, you know, and that like it's, you know, how you talk about something shapes what your view is of the reality of the thing. Like it's, you know,
And the second thing was, and it's funny, I don't know if we're implicitly saying this, but the more I'm thinking about, you know, so speaking, there are many things wrong with it. Like first of all, like the fact that he didn't fully think it through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like and what he says, because he didn't fully think it through, it could be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's just so many things, like just in that entire process, it's just caused so much damage.
Right.
You know, to himself and to the world.
Right. One thing we didn't talk about is the definition of Xil. And so I don't want to go into a whole new exploration of that, but I think our most recent definition of Xil from Rabbeinu Yonah on Mishlei 122 is we call him a veteran pleasure seeker. Okay, meaning everyone starts off as a pleasure seeker, but then there's a window of development where you are a na'ar, where you're seeking pleasure, but you're also under the influence of your father or your Rebbe, and your habits have not been hardened yet. But then once you are no longer under the influence of someone who can like help you, and you've been doing this for years, so then you will just be, you know, it'll be very hard to get out of just living life that revolves around seeking immediate gratification. And that's going to influence how you think about stuff and what your ideas are, because everything is going to be in terms of self-serving. I'll give the example that our Rabbi Sachs gave, which is when you see an apple fall, right? So you can have one guy who says, oh, an apple, food, I'm hungry, right? The apple is food. Another person sees the apple fall and like, oh, I can collect these and sell them, right? And make money. The apple is a commodity. And then there's his favorite example is, Johnny takes the apple and throws it at Susie, so it's a weapon, right? But Newton sees the apple and he's operating in a framework of Yedias Hashem, and he thinks bodies in motion. And then he uses that as a window into Chachmas Hashem. And that's not defining it. What's the difference between Newton and the other people? Why didn't Newton see this and other people? People have seen apples fall for millennia or whatever. Yeah. But is that if you're operating in the framework of pleasure seeking, everything that you perceive, you'll define in terms of the self, and that will limit your ability to get objective knowledge. But Newton is not thinking in terms of himself. He's thinking in terms of the objective reality, and that will open up paths to see things objectively. So the Ksil cannot think objectively. Everything will just be evaluated in terms of how does this serve me pleasure-wise or harm me pleasure-wise.
It's interesting because I wonder another way to think about this pasuk is maybe the knowledge is like the ability to think things through, and the lashon chachamim is like through that process able to articulate.
Right.
I don't know if that's what we're saying.
No, I think that fits into a lot of the ideas, but especially into the one about how it affects your own knowledge. Okay, Sean has an approach from yesterday, right?
Also fits very nicely with some of the things that we're saying. I think what you just left off too. I was thinking about like what bubbling up is.
Okay.
Right. So bubbling up is there's a source, and then it's stuff coming up from it that has neither direction and it's completely random.
Right.
Right. And so I was thinking about the way in which the fool takes foolishness is that he hears an idea that he likes, and then he just spreads it to every single thing that it can like reach out to, and it kind of just like bubbles up.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking, like a practical example is if you think about fools and how they interact with like mystical scientific concepts, like quantum mechanics. So then like everything becomes like a thing about quantum, and like I can apply this idea over there, and it goes over there, right? And just like spreads everywhere, and it corrupts everything.
Yep.
Versus
that's a good example.
He hears an idea, and he sees like its particular mechanics, and like he tries to fit it in to an overarching system. And he's like trying to really hone in on what its place is. And like the way in which he describes it is in a way to try and like get towards that precision. And so it's like a different way of talking about the thing and trying to understand the thing and spread the idea of the thing.
Right.
Where Chachamim are really oriented towards in their speech to put the thing in its proper place. Whereas Ksilim don't really care about its proper place. They're just trying to spread the idea to wherever.
Okay, good. That is a satisfactory explanation of the wellspring muscle. And a good example of this, by the way, I don't know how many of you listened to the voice message from that woman that I posted in the chat on Friday last week. That's a really good example of just this like, oh, I like this and I like this, and that is the Rambam Shita, Right. Okay, so let's anyone else have any ideas they want to share? Because I'd like to do some of the far.
What did you walk away with?
I mean, I think we've covered it. Yeah. Okay, so we usually do our pecking order is usually Metzudas David, then Rabbeinu Yonah, then Meiri. So let's see how many we can get through here. So Metzudas David, I'm using this here. Tetiv Da'as, Titakin Es Hadas. It improves or corrects or fixes the knowledge. Ki af Imre Da'as Yedaber Betikun Nimrat Uvamilos Ktsaras. So even words of knowledge, they will speak with I think tikkun here there's a better translation. They will speak with almost has a connotation of like deliberate precision, I don't know what English word is. Tikkun nimrat of like whatever, like in a well-constructed way, maybe would be a good way to say it. Nimrat, I always forget the literal translation of nimrats.
Has to do with like rots.
It's figurative though. What does nimrats mean? Vigorous, forceful, or intense. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if the medieval usage was different. Actually, he's not medieval. Yeah. Hold on just a second here. For those who don't know, about maybe 6 months ago, then Al-Torah added the dates, right? So 1687 to 1769. This is a good way whenever you're looking stuff up on Al-Torah, it'll just reinforce slightly, and through osmosis you'll figure out you'll remember where everyone was. So again, Metzudas David is much later than people tend to think. Also, it was two people. It was the father-son duo. The father wrote most of it, and I think the son finished it, except oddly enough for Megillas Esther.
Oh man.
And Atha, I think.
Not a big Atha guy.
Oh yeah. You can infer from that statement that you are a big Megillus Rus guy. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I don't know how he uses it, but and milos kataros and concisely. Aval peak sealim, but the mouth of fools off divrei ivelis yarbu ba'amarim kamayan hanovea. Okay, so he is learning it that basically the Chachamim speak in a way that is qualitatively superior and quantitatively conservative, right? In other words, few words. Actually, this is a halacha, right? In the Rambam, yeah, right. Is this in Deos or in Talmud Torah? Deos, probably, right? About speech of Chachamim. Let's see, Deos. Is that 5? Kashem Shechacham. Let's see. Inyan Meruba. Inyan. No. Okay. Maybe it's not. Yeah. Oh, so that's in 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Torah, so too in words of Chachma, of Torah and Chachma, the words of the Chacham should be few, but their ideational content a lot. Okay, it's always hard to translate Inyan. I like ideational content. This is what the Chachamim commanded and said, a person should always teach his students in a concise manner. But if the words are many and the ideational content is minute, this is foolishness. Regarding this, it is said by Koheles in 5:2, that a dream comes in much. I think inyan here is concern, concern. The kol ksil b'rov devarim, and the voice of a fool in many words. Yeah. Right. So that's the Chacham speaks few words with a lot of content or high quality content, and the Ksil is the opposite, speaks with a lot of words and not a lot of content. So what idea do we get from this? What's the chiddush here?
Less is one.
Very, very concisely said. Yeah, no, but the question though, I think the question here is going to be what's the subject and what's the practical application, and depending on how we frame that, we'll get an idea. Because right now, this is just stating a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's and I think we're talking about this a little bit too in terms of the way in which people approach Chachamim.
Yeah.
Like, I think Shakespeare is a great example of, he does say a lot and very concisely, but because it's hard to understand because it's concise for people, they look at it and they're like, there's not much here, and they completely discard it.
Okay.
So it's telling you, when you're hearing people and you're approaching knowledge, don't just assume because the thing is very short and concise. You don't know the conciseness. I mean, just because it's short and it doesn't make so much sense to you on the outset, doesn't mean that there's not a lot of thought.
Okay, I got a perfect example of this. Hold on just a second. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of Yedias Hashem lately. Going over in my my tefillah class, what the who is Hashem, right? So one of my my now 10th grader, who always asks the really good questions, I have a lot, but the one I'm talking about, asked classic question, but like, how can God, who's outside of time, interact with the in a way that is temporal, right? So I wanted to just do a survey of like, both answers to that question, but also how to present it to high schoolers, So I got a bunch of sophisticated answers, okay? And then one of my one person commented, "Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey." Now, I happen to know that this is a chacham, so I thought into what he said, and I said, yeah, I think you're right, which is you can't have knowledge of how God interacts with time, and all of the terms that all of the terms that we use about God are equivocal, and it's like that. But that was how he expressed it, So, oh, is it? Oh, I thought that was an original thing. What's the show? Oh, that's so funny. Oh, so maybe he didn't mean what I thought he meant. Okay, I have to ask him now. But yeah, what I thought he meant is like, all we can do is use words to try to approximate the thing. But yeah, anyway, this is so funny. Okay, anyway, Yeah, why was I saying that? Because you were just saying that when you see a chacham speak with, if you're not aware of this phenomenon of they're gonna cram in lots of ideas into few words, so then you're not going to be as medactic or ma'ayin as you can. Ironically, ma'ayin is not like the ma'ayin of the fool, right? You're not gonna be ma'ayin as much as you should, and and it's what do you call it? It's not going to you're not going to get the idea. Again, really good example of this. All right, I'm tempted to go into it. How many of you are on the Rambam Yomi chat with all of the? Okay, so I still think that's one of those underrated chats. Okay, because it's got all of the people who I want to ask Rambam questions to, and they're all in one place, which I've never seen them gathered in one place. So we found this. I'm not going to go into this now. It's going to take us far afield. Ask me about it later. Yeah, Ezra.
I think to add to Sean's point, I think also there's a tendency for people to, if they hear somebody saying a lot of words and speaking, especially big words or fancy words, just talking out a lot, then they'll assume that it's smart and it makes sense.
Oh, that's good.
And they'll be like,
that's really good. Okay, all right. Now we got an idea going, right? Okay, so in other words, you can make the exact opposite mistake, right? Is mistaking the fool's sophisticated sounding speech and abundant speech as if it means they have a lot to say and it's very refined.
It must make sense.
Exactly. Right. Like politicians, exactly. Yeah. Right. But really, it's just bubbling. Yeah. That's a great idea. Okay. Good. Yeah, Ezra.
So the way I was understanding the sort of stuff is not for the listener, for the speaker.
Okay.
That like. You want to be a chacham,
and
like try to refine your word and make them shorter, more precise, and then similarly, like you'll be seen as a fool, and you'll be a fool if you try to elaborate and do this thing that politicians, philosophers do, of like just speaking bombastically for no
exactly. Yeah, that's a good advice. Also, for me, the most relevant recent example is I used to write a lot of articles, and I changed 4 years ago to writing fewer articles and then also making them only 1 page or 2 pages. And that really, really made me more concise in my writing and better in my ideas. Like when you allow, that's the classic, I think they attribute it to Mark Twain. But I don't know if it's a real quotation or not. You never really know. What do you say? I'm sorry, I didn't have time to write a short letter, meaning that like it's easier to write a lot. It takes a lot of time and thought to like write a short letter. Okay, let's do Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay, Rabbeinu Yonah here says, Lashon Chachamim Tetiv Das, Re'e Kama Bein Lashon Chachamim Ufi Haksilim. See, behold, how much of a difference there is between the tongue of Chachamim and the mouth of the fools. Ki Chachamim, for the Chachamim, lo yaspik lahem hodiam es derech hadas lemor zed derech hadas lehuba. It's not enough for them to teach the way of knowledge and to say this is the way of knowledge. Walk on it. Achin lashonam tiape hadas v'tagdil. Am I reading the right thing? Yeah. Okay. Good. V'tagdil. Ta'amim v'tadir malitos. Okay, so indeed the language, their language will beautify the knowledge, multiply, or I don't think you have. It's not like ta'amim gadolim, like whatever. Make reasons great again. V'tadir malitos, and I guess adorn with figurative language. I don't really know. Make it poetic, basically. Okay, they'll express it in a beautiful way, in a reasonable way, and in a poetic way. What?
What is he doing now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's demonstrating. Ad heyos hadas mikubeles be'oznei hashamim, to the point where the knowledge will be accepted in the ears of the listeners. V'arev alehem ha'inyan, and the ideas will be sweet to them, pleasurable to them. V'ya'af begodel nechochosehem. I looked that up, but I didn't know what it meant. I think it means that it'll be made more evident, meaning like nochach, in the sense of like a hochacha, like a proof, or present. Okay. Tetiv das is tiape, so tetiv means to beautify. V'chein tovas mar'eh, mekubeles v'yafe mar'eh, v'fe mar'eh, right? So tovas mar'eh, tova there does not mean good, it means beautiful in appearance. V'tetiv es rosha, and she shall make her head good. okay, not good like a mind, but behetivo es haneros, okay, beautifying the candles, lashon tikkun, so fixing. Ufixilim yabia ivelas. Okay, but Rabbeinu Yonah methodology, really quickly. I don't know why Rabbeinu Yonah does this in this way. He will often give an explanation of the idea, then he'll justify the way he's reading the words. Okay, to me, the logical order is the opposite, which was actually was again. I gotta get more people to do all Torah. Okay, so with all Torah, Rabbi Novetsky says if you have wish list items or modifications, just email him. Okay, so I said it used to be that the Metzudas David was displayed before the Metzudas Tzion. And I said, can you display the Metzudas Tzion before the Metzudas David? Because that's the logical order. And he said, sure. And he changed it, So like, always looking to improve. Okay, so yeah, but Rabbeinu Yonah does the opposite. So many times I find it helps when you're learning Rabbeinu Yonah, skip to where he tells you how to read the words, then go back and read the idea. Okay, so that's Rabbeinu Yonah. And then he gives another interpretation. Oh, I read that yesterday. He rejects that. All right, so what's Rabbeinu Yonah emphasizing? He's emphasizing presentation, right? So he's definitely learning it that it's for the listeners. Okay, or sorry, that it's talking about the impact of the ideas on the listeners. But the question is, who is this for? Right? Who's the audience and what's the practical application from the way he's taking it? Yeah.
I think it's for someone who may have good ideas, but is just horrible with verbiage.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think
there are a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
They just can't express a great idea.
Right. And they will. I can see a person like that. Not that they have to do this. I can see a person like that saying like, what, like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter how I present it. Like if you can't get the idea, you can't get the idea. Well. Yeah. Maybe if you want knowledge to be conveyed to Am Yisrael, then you should care about how it's presented. Yeah.
Like I was talking to this one guy, and like there was one thing, I didn't watch the full debate. Yeah. I didn't do it, but there was one point where like Trump's whole abortion thing, it was a pretty good idea. The way he formed, like he just couldn't convey it. Fully,
right?
Just because he was like he's horrible at verbiage. He just doesn't.
Right.
He may hire specialists who know how to explain it, but like he can't do it himself.
Interesting. So I will also note that there are two philosophies of communication, or two communication values, maybe. And it's a spectrum. Is that there are communication styles where it puts the responsibility of understanding on the listener. And other ones where it puts the responsibility on the speaker, right? This is machlokes between Rabbi Feder and Rabbi Zimmer, right? And between Rebbe and others, that's what Rabbi Zimmer claims, right? Is that Rabbi Feder always tries to explain things as clearly as possible for the listener. Rabbi Zimmer prefers to be cryptic and to state things in ways that like that are in line with the way he wants to express them, and then you have to work to understand them. Rabbi Zimmer's argument is, well, Rebbe does that and the Gemara does that, which is true. They might do that for their own reasons. And then there's this famous case, and I always forget the details. I know it's a well-known case about, I thought it was a Korean airline that the plane, either it was a plane that crashed or they had more plane crashes than usual.
It's a Chinese. There's a study.
Was it Chinese? Okay, yeah, I don't remember all Asians are the same. For those listening in audio, I'm Asian, so I can say this. It was basically that that in that culture and that language, there was a huge etiquette of like not being explicit when you're speaking and asking for help or something like that, and like you expect them to realize it and to like ask questions, but then in the people who they were talking to, it was the opposite. Like let's say like American people like expect you to and it resulted in like this disastrous thing because they had different expectations about who the onus is on. So here I agree that a chacham, if you're just learning for yourself, well, we've made good arguments for if you're just learning for yourself, you should also be clear and explicit and use language to clarify your ideas. But certainly if you're teaching others, you can't just have this attitude of like, I'm just going to throw the knowledge out there and take it or leave. If you really care about knowledge, you will work at making it clear and presentable and emotionally appealing and aesthetically appealing to the listeners. Yeah,
is there a halacha about like teaching in chidos or something like that?
Halacha about teaching in like riddles, or it's not. I don't know of a halacha. I mean, I know Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei says divrei chachamim b'chidosam, that chachamim do speak in riddles, and there's definitely with ideas that there are reasons to do that. For example, in Agada, in Agadic literature, the chachamim concealed ideas that either intellectually or psychologically people aren't going to be ready for, or they sometimes even did it just to easy to remember or to give students the practice in decoding ideas, even if the idea is simple. So there are reasons to do it, but absent those reasons, you should be as clear as possible, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. One other thing is,
yeah.
Also like philosophy, prophecies also gave things in the riddles.
Right. So that's slightly different because they receive them in riddles, right? And there's, they receive them in images, and there are, like the Rambam says in Yesodei Torah, there are prophecies where the Chachamim just convey the mashal and not the nimshal, then others where they convey both, and others where they just convey the nimshal. So I don't know what decision goes into whether a Navi makes it explicit or not. But the content is received in that form. Yeah, Ezra?
I think also it could be almost similar to the idea I was saying for Matsudas David.
Yeah.
That for him, it was somebody who's listening should like watch out for like speaking nice and fancy and stuff because he might not actually have an idea.
Yeah.
But I think the Ben Yonah is saying that a Chacham should realize that people are attracted to like speaking in fancy terms or things like that.
Yeah.
You should say that to get people to be more likely to hear what he's saying.
Yeah, that's true. Right. In other words, yeah, you do need to cater to your audience's what they're familiar with and what their preference is. It is a dance, meaning that you are trying to advance them, but like I will often speak in terms that I wouldn't speak with you guys in, but if I'm talking to, let's say, high schoolers, I'll use language like, for example, like the word spiritual is not really part of my vocabulary. I don't like that word because it's a smokescreen for ignorance unless you define what you mean by spiritual. And usually you just mean non-physical. And then you have to, but in certain contexts, I'll use the word spiritual because that's what people associate with, if I say metaphysical, they'll be like, metal what? Okay, let's really quickly just see how long the Meiri is. So he connects this with the last three. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is not gonna, we'd have to review the last three. Okay, you know what? Let's actually stop for today after we just really quickly summarize. So we have three of our own ideas, broadly speaking. We have, if you hang around people who are Chachamim, their speech will improve your knowledge. And if you hang around people who are Ksilim, their speech will amplify their own foolishness, which will cause your mind to be influenced by them. Then we have Moshe's idea, which is about how you affect knowledge in the world and how you relate to knowledge being received in the world, which is that the Chachamim are the ones who are going to contribute to the knowledge, and the Ksilim will hold it back. And when you hear an idea about some big thing, it doesn't have to be some big thing, but especially about the big things, you should note who the speaker is and interpret accordingly. And then we have the other approaches of the way you speak will clarify your ideas, and you should use speech as a tool to do that. And if you have Ksil-like tendencies of being attracted to or being addicted to pleasure seeking, and you give voice to that, it's also going to strengthen your Ksil tendencies. Okay, then we have the Matsudas David. Oh, sorry. Then okay. One thing we have. Okay, there are too many ideas. We have Sean's idea about the bubbling, which fits into several ones, but the bubbling, it's indiscriminately just letting out knowledge, not letting out speech, and you should recognize that it's indiscriminate and it's not. It looks abundant, but it's not necessarily gonna have substance there. And the Chachamim's distribution of knowledge will not look like that. It'll look different. And don't mistake one for the other. It's like what Ezra was saying. Don't mistake lots of fancy words for really sophisticated ideas. To the contrary, look for the concise speaker who is concise and precise and few words in speech. Not like me right now. And the Matsudas David gave that idea, which lends itself to all three interpretations. And then the Rabbeinu Yonah says Chachamim should tailor their speech to the listeners. He does not really elaborate on the fools, right? So we didn't quite get to that, but we don't have time. I don't want to get into morning Seder. Okay, good ideas. Lots of ideas here. All right, thanks for coming.
Why can't we just have a combination of like it's on the